All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me as always are Petty and Gollix. Um, right, let us get to the news, such as it is. Ooh, Petty, why don't you start us off this week?
Oh God, where do I begin? We have the close date for the pool set up. It is going to be next Monday, so hooray. Um, I replaced that shelving last week, and like Friday morning, Thursday morning, somewhere in there, found the floor of our laundry room was flooded because the supply line to the toilet was leaking.
At
That
least that's a
bath,
room where water is expected to be.
not coming
I mean,
from,
it's still bad.
yeah. But yeah, my dad had to take a day off of work, and we had to fix that. I never want to become a plumber, because God, my legs were still hurting from that, just having to bend down. Because if the bathroom was bigger, it would not have been a problem. But I had to kneel in the bathtub to hold the light for my dad to get the tools in there. And well, that trick would have been fun for 20 years ago me who's pushing 32. It hurt a lot, but that's handled. And then today, like at 20 minutes before we got together for air, my dad informs me I need to look through the lockbox because he has a retirement from a previous job he's cashing out, and he needed me to find his marriage license and mom's birth certificate. Found the marriage license, did not find the birth certificate.
Oh boy.
So then I had to run my mom through, because my mom went to bed, had to get her up, run her through the process of ordering her birth certificate, and I still also had to get the trash gathered up downstairs, so that sucked. But hopefully it's handled, and hopefully we get it they mail it out in time to be useful, because they need to process the application and stuff, so hopefully that's all taken care of and dad gets his 16,000, and then everything's all good and happy in that. As far as gaming goes, still getting ready for my Digimon tournament. I'm still missing cards, which I'm kind of perturbed about the seller on this because they're being scummy. I have
So,
or hmm?
so you did contact them?
Yeah, and they're basically telling me wait till the 8th. My event
Is that
is
the last day of the expected
yes.
deliver? I
I
mean, you don't have a whole lot of recourse before that.
Most sellers, if like, because I've ordered stuff after it from Florida and they're in Ohio, so the stuff I ordered from Florida later is here, so it's more than likely they either lied about the shipping date or it's been lost in the mail.
That's possible, but I have had things show up the day after the last possible day.
I mean, I
Like
guess
literally the next day after.
it's one of those. It sucks. Like if I had a local store near me, I could probably get these cards sourced because they're just like I think two of them are rare cards and the other ones are a few commons. So it's like,
It's just sometimes shipping sucks.
yeah, tell me about
And
it.
yes, it would be nice if they offered preemptively. I'm not saying they're not being kind of a jerk about it. I'm just saying technically they're in the clear until
Yeah,
the actual last expected day.
yeah. But yeah, hopefully either of these cards can be sourced or there's a local Discord for the Digimon group in my area. See if anybody else is going and see if they have those cards I can borrow off of them if I must. But yeah, I guess we will discuss that. I did order the new Digimon Monster Hunter crossover VPET devices because I like Monster Hunter. I like Digimon. Put them together. So yeah, I have both the Rathalos and Zenogre ones coming. Apparently they're both the same on both devices, so I can leave one shrink wrapped or whatever pretty on the shelf and play with one of the other one, which that's cool. I may be looking into procuring a couple of the other Digimon Keller devices because apparently they can link with the Monster Hunter one, and I'm assuming that's how you get the Rathalos, Greymon, and Garurus and Ogremon, or whatever they're calling them.
Ratha Greymon or Laius Greymon, because Rathalos is one of the many Monster Hunter things that had a very inexplicable name change. It's Leolaius in Japanese.
Yeah.
And Xenogarurumon, yeah. It's unclear, actually, if that's going to be how you do it, but it's possible.
It's
they did
the
have
expected thing, because there's no reason they would just be there without connecting to a Digimon device.
I don't know if they have Mega Evolution or They do have some in the color, don't they?
They do. It's more than likely you need to battle with a Digimon
That's
Keller
how they
device,
did it, yeah.
and it will unlock the Digimon, I guess, evolution in air quotes. We still don't know how those devices are going to work.
They do. Apparently, they're going to be mostly Monster Hunter monsters in them.
It's going to be all Monster Hunter monsters, as I understand it, but we don't know if it's going to be
aside from the crossover one.
Yeah, we don't know if they're going to evolve it for like variants where you'll have like a Rathalos, it'll evolve into Azure Rathalos or whatever.
I guess it's going to be kind of unrelated, but still mostly within the same monster family, like
because it would make less sense
or whatever
for
the fuck they call them.
a Rathalos turning into a Zenogre or whatever, or Kezu or whatever, you know. So yeah, that's going to be fun. It's not going to be here till April or March, so there will be pictures when it shows up.
See, it's 18 monsters on each one, right? So
yeah,
that's the same as the color version 1-2.
Yeah.
Which did have one DNA Evo, which was, Omegamon Alter S.
Yeah.
Which I believe was done by battling.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I was just checking, because there have been many remakes of the first few versions of Digimon.
Yeah.
And I forget which ones have which mechanics sometimes.
Yeah. And then as far as gaming goes, for some reason I've been on a kick of playing Vampire Survivor because it's on Game Pass. So I've been playing through that, and I have a lot of the achievements. I have about half of the achievements, well, the non-DLC achievements, so I've put some time in, you can say. Obviously, to get the DLC achievements, I'd need to buy it, then buy the DLC, so that one's going to be unlikely to happen, at least right now. And I think that's it for me.
All right. Well, that means it's your go, Golix.
Unless he's muted.
I muted myself because I had been unmuted. Because I was talking on during Petty's. Anyway, I have my new car. It still smells like disinfectant and stuff. So I have to
Better to smell like disinfectant than smell like 3-pack-a-day cigarette use.
Yeah, I think as I smelled it before, and it didn't really smell bad, but they want it
Yeah.
to be clean and anyway, I'll probably do a damp cloth sometime this weekend or something.
Yeah.
I'm taking it to get registered hopefully tomorrow, assuming the town hall doesn't have anything weird going on. My town isn't very big, so it should be fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main thing. So I'm starting to get. I have an appointment coming up early next week to see if I'm a candidate for home sleep test to see if I have sleep apnea or something that something can be done about.
Oh, fun.
So I'll have a report on how that went next time probably. And then after that I have to schedule my annual checkup and immunizations.
Oh, man.
Because it's getting to be that time of year.
Time for the pokey pokey.
Uh-huh. I mean, the pokey pokey is better than the get sick twice.
Fair. I need to do my shots. I've just, going to the doctor is hard when you can't drive yourself and the doctor's office is over an hour away.
Oh, yeah. Anyways, so yeah, that's pretty much what I got going on. Video game-wise, I've been playing a little bit of Splatoon 3, but also I did pick up Zelda Echoes of Wisdom and have been playing that. I am just about at the... I cleared all of the intro stuff before you have any significant choices, and am now working through the, setup for the first dungeon. Which you get a choice of whether to go to the river or the desert, and I decided to go to the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And I will probably be playing some of that during part of the show, but that's about where I am.
Well,
What's up with you, Adam?
Well, I suppose the question that our audience may have is, how well did I survive the hurricane? And the answer is, very well.
Spoiler, as we are not talking to a ghost.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was assuming nothing went too bad since I would have probably heard that if something was awful, but...
Yeah.
I suppose it's not good to take that for granted.
Probably not, but it's more, not dealing with any, say, property damage.
Yeah.
Or, broken windows, that kind of shit. Like, the worst we got was, some branches fell down that had to be gathered up for pickup.
Mm.
See, this is the advantage of living about 20 miles inland and on a hill.
I mean, tell that to the people in, Asheville or whatever, who live many miles inland on a mountain.
I'm just talking about storm surge here. Like, the storm surge was the big, concern about the hurricane.
It was, 20 feet at some points?
Yeah. And you also have to remember, Asheville, North Carolina, that place is not built for a hurricane. Everything around here in Florida, they're built to deal with and withstand hurricane force winds and shit. But that's perhaps a topic for a different show.
One that happens a little later. Wink, wink. Nudge, nudge.
Yeah. Aside from that, tomorrow I finally do the vitals check. Nothing seems to going to be interfere with that this time. Hopefully the blood pressure has leveled off. The though I guess we find out. And outside of that, thankfully, it's been a pretty non-eventful couple of days, which, in the wake of a hurricane, is actually a good thing. Like, anyway, as far as gaming goes, still with the Pillars of Eternity. Right now, I'm going through some of the DLC stuff. And spent about 5 hours dealing with, oh, hey, we just laid a bonus boss in this fucking cave. I'm like, yeah, that was a dick move. It's also, I want to have a talk with one of the developers about how spells work, because when I petrify an alpine dragon, I expect that thing to stay stone, not start walking about after a few rounds.
Dragons have special immunity to a whole list of stupid status effects.
I mean, in fairness, a lot of dragons do have magical resistance in a lot of media, so it wouldn't surprise me if they could just kind of break out of stuff like that. But I get you.
Yeah, but here's the thing: like, I'm using the status effects that this dragon isn't invulnerable to. Like, also very vulnerable to charm, surprisingly enough, which I did get to work. But the problem is, a monster becomes uncharmed when you start hitting it. And considering this is a battle where, I'm trying to kill a big ass dragon, it's like, oh, charmed, uncharmed.
Wow, that would be useful if I was trying to walk around it.
Like, well, it's also, there's a whole bunch of other mobs in this battle, so, it is useful for clearing them out. Because less so with the breath weapon, and more with the big jaws, is those hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, anyway, putting that all aside, time to get to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Rick Salter of Hojo Studio.
Hello, how's it going?
It goes well. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, and unfortunately, I have nothing to add to the Digimon discussion because it already went to a level of detail that kind of made me cross-eyed. So I'll leave that.
We could go deeper if we wanted to, but that's a different podcast
I'm sure,
entirely.
I have no doubt.
Yeah,
I have no doubt you could go deeper.
Yeah, that's the other show.
I know.
Your chance.
I'll be over here salivating in the corner.
Yes. Anyway, so how we like to get started properly and formally is we ask this particular question: what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
That's a good question. In terms of a personal level, I suppose when I was maybe 10, my bigger brother brought home a computer for the first time because they had them at his school, and he convinced my parents to get one. And it was an ancient thing. I don't even think they existed in the US, but you would have had an equivalent to it. It was called a Micro B. It had one color. It was all kind of command line type stuff. It was a very creaky old thing.
Yeah, we have the Tandies here, which are basically similar, like the older Tandy line for US people who need an equivalent.
I'm sure it was a kind of white labeled version of those Tandies anyway. I think they would have just changed the logo and licensed the same.
Either that or the BBC
motherboard.
Micros.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We had those actually. We did have BBC Micros over in Australia. So that was my introduction. And my brother at the time knew some basic coding and in BASIC. And I think I was hooked from that point onwards. The idea that I could actually make this thing do what I wanted it to do. And yeah, I've been a gamer ever since. Also, in terms of what made me a tragic gamer was my parents refused to ever buy me a console, ever. So the NES came along, couldn't convince my parents to get one. Super Nintendo, same thing, whatever. And then when I finally got a job, the first day of my job, I came home with a PlayStation, and that was it. And so I've been compensating for that ever since. And then professionally, we just started. I got a job in advertising, which was sort of how my career started ages ago, and we realized that what we were trying to do with every campaign was turn it into a game, and like find an excuse to turn any ad campaign into some kind of interactive game. And then Yola, who is my co-director at Hojo, we just decided, why don't we just start making games instead? And
When
that's
in
how
doubt,
Hojo
gamify
started.
it.
Yeah, absolutely.
True. Though I will note there is a difference between even a gamified ad and actual, games.
Yeah.
Even advert games.
Yeah, and we just were leaning more and more towards the game side, to the point where we realized we didn't actually care about trying to sell other people's products. We just wanted to invent games. So yeah, we just started moonlighting it, just doing it in our spare time, and to an extent, we still do. We're not full-time developers, because it's an extremely unlikely thing to build a profitable business as an indie developer. You'll find most of them are, working day jobs or have other sources of income, unless you get lucky and create that 1 in a million game. Unless you create Cult of the Lamb or something like that, which can then turn into an actual business.
I suppose, but we have found no shortage of people who do, who haven't had that 1 in a million hit and do this as their day job. So, it
Well,
takes.
that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it could be different areas and all that stuff. I
think it's about whether you can build a sustained audience. If you have a game that, like say an extraction shooter on Steam or something, and you've built a pretty solid audience, and that audience can follow you with every update and all of that, I can see how that might work. But I'd say even those games, like even the ones you find on Steam, that are kind of might be seen by players as sort of moderate hits and things like that, those are still kind of 1 in a million. They're still very hard to pull off, I'd say. So yeah, but I think it's also just
there are different ways of doing it. We had this kind of conversation with a developer not too long ago where their strategy is that they release not a lot of games, but they release a game like maximum like 1.5 years, which is very much against the grain of developers that we get on this program who spend 2 to 3 years on a single game.
Yep. I think that's a good point. We would never spend more than 2 years on a game for exactly that reason, because you'll find that depending on the platform you choose and things like that, it'll either become a success or it won't. And then at that point, you're probably better off moving on to something else, and then distributing. Having a more of a quantitative approach enables possibly a bunch of different revenue streams. They don't all have to be hits, but if you take them all together, then you might be able to make enough money to fund the next one. And that's
Right.
mostly what indie developers are trying to do. They're just trying to fund their next game, one way or another.
Yeah, once again, it depends, because we have, once again, no shortage of people who are here and they're just saying, I wanted to make my dream game, whatever that dream may be, and if it takes 2 to 3 years or more, so be it.
Yeah.
One should not underestimate the passion on display when it takes to make one of these things.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's it's definitely worth keeping in mind that games are interesting because they're simultaneously two things at once. They are art and they're also a commercial product. And sometimes, sometimes games are more on the kind of art scale. Like as you say, it was always been someone's passion to tell this story, in an interactive form. And then there are other ones like Candy Crush, which is just a commercial product. Then they're not trying to make a artistic statement or tell a particularly unique story. And that's nothing against games like Candy Crush. They're fantastic for entirely different reasons. So yeah, I think that, but it's that aspect of games that they can be both of those things at once that makes the work of funding games sometimes quite confusing to people sometimes, because you may have funding bodies that want to focus more on the art side rather than the product side, and whereas investors will be thinking more about potential profits for a game. So yeah, it's a big landscape.
Yeah. I mean, the that debate you're talking about here is not unique to game. Art versus capital. Certainly something that permeates, well, pretty much all art forms, being honest.
I think that's true. I think that the interactive aspect of games make it sometimes a little more interesting in that sense. The engineering side of it.
That's the checksum difference here, between a video game and a movie, a book, really just about any other medium. They're passive experiences. This is an active one.
I think that's
Like,
the distinction I'm getting at, because the things that you would expect from, say, software development, like if you're building Jira or Twitch or a piece of software, there's a huge amount of sort of testing involved and things that you would not consider artistic processes, more kind of engineering processes. And definitely there's analogies to film as well, because there would be all kinds of technical aspects to making a film that you might not call an artistic process, but it still involves a lot of work. But I think that it's just the engineering and the testing and all of this sort of stuff that you have to do with games, on top of it being an artistic expression, makes it quite unique.
Yeah. Anyway, so putting all of that aside, how long have you been making games for?
We've been making games in one form or another for almost 10 years, and they've been small games we've released on phone. They've been games we've released on Steam. So it's we see it as like a long form hobby of ours. We've never dropped everything and just gone full time into game development, but we have been doing it on and off for about a decade now.
And from what I've been able to discern from your website, it looks like you've been mostly into mobile development.
Yeah, I think that the style of our games, our games are sort of quirky and they're cute and sort of maybe a little silly, and that kind of aesthetic, I think, lends itself well to mobile experiences. That sort of quick playing short sessions, that sort of thing. And some of the games have been a little more ambitious, and we've made the jump to Steam. But I think Steam, obviously, it's very easy to release a game on Steam. There aren't a lot of barriers to entry, and that path from developing it to releasing it on Steam is quite easy. But I don't think Steam is kind of our bread and butter in terms of our game's style. We're focusing mostly on mobile.
I mean, I'm looking at your Godfeather game here on screen, and this, not for nothing, just screams mobile game to me.
Yeah.
Like, this has got just a very, for lack of a better term, mobile look to it.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of its gameplay, but its art style and everything.
I absolutely agree, and we've definitely had of all the platforms we've released the Godfeather on, which is Steam, Switch, and iPhone. We've had by far the greatest reception on iPhone. So yeah, I think that definitely validates that assumption that it's It's a mobile first type of game, and I think most of our games in future will be.
So, what made you want to experiment with other platforms?
Well, you mean as opposed to mobile?
Yes.
Well, like I
Yeah.
said, I think it's just that in order to just get the game out there and to be able to tell people, hey, you can play a demo, you can do this, you can do that. It's much easier to do that with Steam, just because, as I say, much lower bar for entry and all that kind of stuff. We'd never released a game on a console before, so the Switch release of Godfeather, which we're playing now, is the first time we've ever released something that hasn't been on either just PC, Mac, or phone. So that was
Mhm.
pretty exciting for us because, as you said, it screams mobile, which I think includes Switch in terms of something you can sort of take with you and play a quick round of. The Godfeather is a roguelike, so it's really just a question of how far you can get. As you progress through the story, go to different environments. We're looking at the suburbs environment now, but the game has 3 complete environments with random levels within each. Plenty of cutscenes and boss encounters between what we're playing here and the end of the game. So we just felt that Switch would be a really good fit, and it was. We've had a lot of fun releasing it on Switch and making our way through the eShop process, which is definitely a big learning experience. It's really interesting from a developer's perspective to look back on all the different developer portals you're exposed to. So the Steam one, Apple's one, Google Play's one, and Nintendo, and the differences between them all. Things that are different focuses for different platforms are really interesting.
Mm. I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that, or if that's something that might be, well, shielded by, let's say, NDAs.
Oh, sure. No, I can elaborate on it. I think the best way to frame it is it's not so much about one platform being better or worse to work with. It's just that they have different focuses. They're concerned about different things. So, for example, Nintendo is a massive brand, and the Switch is a massive platform, so it becomes very regional. It's broken down into a set of rules for EU will be completely different to releasing it in China, will be completely different to releasing it in America. All of these sorts of things. Whereas in different, say for Apple, for example, they still have that in their platforms, but Apple takes a very global view of just, there is one platform and it's the App Store, so it's a slightly different approach. I can't really elaborate on it beyond that, but it's also about the kind of user experience is quite different. The speed with which you get responses from people from the platform about things you need to do or things you need to be careful of. I can say, for example, one amazing thing about Nintendo is they're incredibly responsive with, say, testing, right down to the point where they will literally play test your game the way you're playing it now, and will tell you specific things about colors or about interesting user experience quirks or bugs they've found. And I was just astonished by the kind of granular level of the feedback, which was really, really helpful. It was just amazed me. I assumed that they would just give it a quick look over and check that there's nothing offensive in it, and that would be it. But no, their testing team really goes into detail, which it results in a better game, a better product for everybody. So I was really impressed with that.
Now, like, were you in contact with the Australian branch of Nintendo, or?
No, well, no, it was actually region by region. So, they have different people in charge of. So, for example, if there are particular quirks of the game that might have issues in Germany, you'll be hearing from their team in Germany. So, it's like I said, it's really, really super granular. They take it very seriously.
That is interesting. But, you know, don't want to get any further into this tangent because, you know, we don't want to run afoul of any sort of uh, lawyer ninjas, let's say.
Sure.
Yeah.
But, well, I mean, all I can say is we had a terrific experience with all the platforms we released them on, and it was just a very a great learning experience for us to just realize, okay, this is how Nintendo likes to do it. This is how Apple likes to do it. This is how Steam likes to do it. Yeah, it was a real eye opener for us.
Right. Anyway, so about the game itself, what is the Godfeather?
The Godfeather is a Mafia Pigeon saga. It's a roguelike, so every time you get caught, you immediately have to go back to the beginning again. You just won a level there. But in terms of the plot, you're a low-level member of the Pigeon Mafia, and throughout the course of the story, you're instructed by the Godfeather, which is the Don of the Pigeon underworld, to go on missions and take back the neighborhood from all of your enemies. So this is everything that you've seen in the game. These are people. This is enemy birds. These are pretty much anybody who isn't a pigeon. It looks like you've made it to the first boss, which is really cool. So the first boss in the game, for example, is the Pidge Patrol. So they've captured a whole bunch of your soldiers, and you need to defeat it to continue. So each world of the game is broken into 4 levels and then a boss fight which protects the level. And then in between, you'll learn more about the whole Mafia story. It's obviously modeled pretty closely after The Godfather, so there's lots of betrayals. There are people that you thought you can trust that you can't. There are interesting sub-characters that come in. But yeah, you're basically a pigeon assassin, and so mostly what you're doing is pooping on your enemies to weaken them and take back your neighborhood from your enemies. You're going to need to find a tree really soon because the drone is going to come. No. So you're given along the way as you continue through the game, you earn crumb, which is the currency. You can then go to the roost, which is the pigeon mafia's hideout. You can trick out your pigeon with different styles. There's over 60 cosmetic items you can unlock, and you can also earn power-ups each time you do a run. So things like giving yourself more retries, making the cockatoos less likely to spot you. The standard sort of lots of power-ups that you'd expect in a roguelike to make your pigeon stronger and more likely to succeed. And then eventually, hopefully, you'll become good enough to make it through the whole game and sort of discover the secret at the heart of the pigeon mafia. You'll notice that you've run out of poop. What happens is eventually that's like your ammo, and when you run out, you need to find a dumpster, and you dumpster dive to restock that. So that's what you'll be doing now. But yeah, that's the game. It's a pigeon mafia roguelike.
Okay, and I suppose that opens up the most obvious question, and that is why a pigeon mafia game?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I think we were thinking,
Haven't you ever seen them, Adam, clustering on the sidewalks, clearly planning something?
Snapping
That's
their
exactly
fingers.
it.
Maniacs.
The thing is, we thought that it seemed, whenever you see them clustering and you were sort of thinking, what are they up to? But the cool part is pigeons are the most clueless birds. And that's actually what made the idea of them having a mafia so funny for us. If it was eagles or crows or something like that, it wouldn't be funny. It's only funny because they're pigeons. And so as soon as we started thinking, so this is the roost now, you can see, so you've unlocked the next part of the story. There's just something inherently funny about pigeons taking themselves so seriously and thinking they're part of an underground organization. And I think every Hojo game has taken characters that take themselves seriously but aren't in on the joke, and that's sort of the essence of the comedy we try to attempt. That's our sort of satirical approach, is that it's funny if these silly characters don't take themselves seriously.
But not winking at the audience either.
No, exactly. The more seriously you take it, the funnier it is, we've found.
Okay.
You'll guys see it in a second.
I mean, I guess consider that validation of your approach.
Well, there you go. But I mean, that's the essence of satire. Even if you look at a show like The Office, it's funny because the central character doesn't realize how ridiculous he is, and never has an understanding of how ridiculous they are. And I think that's...
I mean, I'm sure this is an argument in the schools of comedy, because I've certainly seen a lot of what they call postmodern, ironic sort of comedy, where they very much are in on the joke at various levels.
Mm.
But
I guess that's true. But in terms of just our particular aesthetic, we don't. I guess we don't like that sort of breaking the fourth wall kind of thing. As soon as you do that, then someone's asking you to find them funny, and then that's where we're not too keen on that.
And I suppose I also have to ask this question: have you ever watched any episode of Animaniacs?
Oh, is this the one that we heard about this? There is something called Goodfeathers or something?
Yes.
Is that what you're referring?
Good
Yes.
Feathers.
Yes, we became aware of that about halfway through making the game, it's exactly the same sort of thing that we're going for. So yeah, we were glad to see that we weren't the only one who found that sort of thing funny.
Right. I suppose if it makes you feel better, you went with a Godfather satire, and they went with Goodfellas.
Yes, exactly. We just felt that The Godfather was more iconic, although we're huge Goodfellas fans as well. And there are plenty of references in the game to The Godfather and various things like that. So yeah,
I feel like those were fighting words in some circles, but we don't care that much. Like,
are you a Goodfellas person or are you a Godfather person? Yeah, I think it's fine to like both. I
in
think
2024.
you'd be surprised. I'm like, but once again, this isn't a podcast for film buffs.
Mm.
not this
but
episode anyway.
no. Like, anyway, and was there a particular reason you wanted to attach procedural generation to the whole affair?
Generations.
Why did you make it a roguelike?
I think it was because we wanted a game where you it wasn't initially. Initially we just had this idea of you'd be sent on missions, to do various things. And so then it had that kind of old school GTA, the original GTAs that were top down. It had that kind of flavor to it. But then we thought, in order for it to work as something that you can play kind of quickly and all that sort of stuff, it just sort of drifted towards roguelike. It could have gone one of two ways. It was either going to be a roguelike or it was going to be very cozy, where there was almost no fail state and you were just kind of wandering around. But we went for roguelike. I suppose that's a kind of indie stalwart in the sense that you can then use procedural generation for your levels. So you're not spending 4 years basically hand creating content. You just sort of create the components and the elements and then you randomize it. And so I suppose it just that's just where the game went, piece by piece.
Fair enough. And so, in regards to phone platforms, you have mentioned that this game is out on iDevices, on Apple products. Is there any consideration for an Android version?
We'd love to do an Android version. I think that's definitely next up because it was. I really think that iOS, touchscreen phones seem to be a terrific platform for the game. So, and because we've developed it in Unity, there's not really any technical constraints for releasing it on Android. I suppose the only question is, and perhaps you'd be able to answer this better than us. Are premium games a thing on Android? Do people pay their $2 for a game on Android, or do they always expect it to be a kind of free download?
I'm like, I can answer that, and you're not going to like it. The answer is premium games are very much not a thing on Android.
Yeah.
It's like you can attempt it, sure, but from what I understand, the only game that's ever been able to draw money from Android and be a premium app is Minecraft.
Yeah. That was our assumption. So there would be things we'd need to tweak in the game, in order to make it work. we'd either have to. I mean, we don't want to put ads in the game. We really don't. I
Yeah.
don't think no gamer enjoys that. So I don't know. I don't know. We'd have to figure out some way, some equitable, fair way of monetizing
They-
it. Because
well,
I don't think.
So the other way that that's usually done, it's probably not applicable to a game that sets itself up with randomization as your game does. And that is to split the game up. It's like the first chapter is like free or $1, and then it's the subsequent pieces of the game that are, like $5, $10. Like,
Well, we could do that definitely. That's almost like it's basically a free demo, right? And then you just sort of pay to unlock the rest of the game. But that's not that That's not really all that different from freemium, right? Sorry, from premium. I suppose it is. I suppose we could just let people.
Yeah, I guess it also depends how much you're charging for the game. Like $20, $30, probably not. But if it's like under $2, people would probably pay that. It really depends on the type of model you're going for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really more of a question of how much the like, would you be charging $5 for chapters 2 through 5, or $10, or that's the bigger question there.
I think that, and I can only think in Australian dollars right now, which is about, I think, 60 or 70% of an American dollar. But I think that it would just be, download the demo for free, and then it'd be one unlock fee for the whole game, and that would be something in the order of $2 US. I think that would be fine.
And yeah, like
from our perspective.
Yeah, and like free to start at using Nintendo parlance, free to start games usually do better than pay $5 up front.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't think Android has a refund policy. That's why people prefer the free to start, because if it's free to start and they don't like it, just uninstall it.
Yeah. I think that's fair, and we'd have to weigh up the number of people who would download it and not convert versus if it was premium up front, they just wouldn't even experience the game at all, because they'd see the dollars. Look, I don't know if this game's good or not. So
especially
I think that makes sense.
An unknown IP,
yeah,
if it was from a known IP, it would probably, the premium price would probably be an easier sell than, say, if this had the actual Godfather IP attachment.
Yeah.
Then, just a pigeon homage.
By the way, that's one of the things we do like, is that when you search for the Godfather, our game will come up next to it, which is so it's one of those things where it's like, okay, please don't
Google
sue
AI.
us. Yeah. But I think.
Yep. Search engine optimization.
I think you're right. I think that the strategy for Android would be a free download, and you could play maybe one level, and then just a small fee to unlock the whole game.
Because even first 3 up to the first boss is a good free to start thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose it's worth asking if you ever considered the PlayStation or Xbox ecosystem for any of your games.
I think we certainly will in future, but again, like I said, it's a interesting value equation that as soon as you get into the big box type consoles, more is involved in getting your game certified and released. It costs more to do all of that, and also again, we're putting a game like the Godfather up against Horizon Zero Dawn and things like that. So I think it becomes. I mean, of course. Smaller indie games certainly can make money on the PlayStation and Xbox and all that kind of stuff. It's just more where you're, as an indie with limited resources, you've got to put your eggs in the basket that's likely to succeed the most, because you
also
don't have.
Pick and choose when you want to come out. it'd be better to
Right.
come out during the summer lull when there's not much to play than try to come out gun blazing, fall release madness.
Yeah. And I suppose I should ask if you've given any consideration to your next game project yet.
We have 2 games in active development right now. I can't speak about either of them, but they're both very different to the Godfeather. So
Okay.
I think that we're definitely trying something new. I think it will be at least one of the games that we're working on will be much more on the kind of commercial product side as opposed to quirky art project type side. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, we should hopefully have some news about that early next year.
All right. So I think I've asked all my questions. I'll see if my colleagues here have anything further.
I think I'm good. Alex, you have anything? Or are you muted again?
Sorry, I was distracted. I think I'm good. It looks neat, though.
Ooh, shiny.
That's
Thank
my
you.
line.
Well, as you
Yes.
mentioned, it's on Steam for Mac and PC. It's on Switch and it's on iPhone, and it will definitely come to Android, I reckon, early next year.
All right.
Okay. Glad we could help with that particular platform in our own way. Anyway, so yeah, be sure to go and try out the Godfeather on your
Almost got
platform of
tripped up
choice
on that
today.
too, didn't you?
No, I just wanted to make sure I didn't, call it the Godfather.
Yeah.
Hey, check that out too, and then check out the Godfeather.
Yes. Anyway, Patty, play us to the next segment. All right, so welcome to the topic of discussion. So this week we are talking about Link's Awakening. Now I know we've talked about this particular title in the past,
Especially with
but
the old crew.
yes, but it seemed like a good idea to dredge this back up, considering that its remake's spiritual successor has arrived on our shore.
Mm-hmm.
And that, and that is Echoes of Wisdom. Like, now, from what I understand, gameplay wise and design wise, Echoes of Wisdom is actually very different. Like,
Seems how it doesn't include all of the, limitations of a Game Boy game. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one way of putting it. And indeed, that was one of the great lightning rods of conversation and consternation around the Link's Awakening remake. That it was too faithful to the Game Boy original. Like, but
And yet they
in my
took
mind,
and yet they took away the Rooster Rang combo.
like, they also, like, I want to say they took out the exploding arrows.
No, bomb arrows, I'm pretty sure, are still in.
One way to find out.
Well, okay.
Yeah, no, they're still here.
Okay, good to know.
They did improve several things, mostly related to the number of buttons limitation.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
They made it so that
your sword is always on the B button.
Yep, your sword is always equipped, so you don't have to worry about only having one other thing or walking around without it. Your shield is also always equipped, so you don't have to not use your shield 90% of the time. And the strength upgrades are and I believe the swimming upgrade already was, but the strength upgrades are passive. You don't have to keep them equipped for that.
Also, your dash is now bound to its own button.
That too.
Yeah.
And they also made it so that you don't have, so that you can buy back the shovel after you trade it for a boomerang.
I feel like I was the only person who was never bothered by the switching of items.
It's not that
I wasn't at the time, but that doesn't mean that it's not an improvement to not have to do that.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's less
True.
bother from the limitations of the hardware.
Also,
Right.
switching items is not a problem. Getting a text block when you don't have the power bracelet on and you walk up against a power bracelet liftable block when you're getting ready to challenge the windfish is a bit obnoxious.
That is true. Like, it wasn't just constrained to that, or just, like, picking up items. The fucking pieces of power in the acorn.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you get one of those, the same message. And this isn't the only Zelda game where that kind of, micro annoyance is contained.
The compass reminds you about the
Yep.
Ding. There's a secret every time too.
Yeah. So once again, those are things that are not just endemic to Link's Awakening. Like, I remember Ocarina of Time having a lot of the same problems there as well, in terms of reminding you. But, when we're talking about, like, the main problem people had with the original version or the DX version of Link's Awakening, it comes down to all of the item switching, because you only have 2 face buttons.
Mm-hmm. They also made the fast travel a little bit more plentiful and make it so you could select instead of just going to the next one in the sequence.
Right. Like, the weird thing about Link's Awakening is they made everything equipable. Like, even your sword and shield, which, okay, fair play to the sword, since, you only have 2 buttons.
Yeah,
and
compared to, like, the original NES version where the sword or the shield was passive.
Yeah,
in the Game Boy version, in the Game Boy and DX versions, when you're walking around past a certain point, you're probably going to want to have the Rock's Feather and the Power Bracelet equipped.
Yeah, that's not what I'm getting at. I'm like, the confusing thing, at least to me, is that they made the shield a selectable item when they did not have to do that. Like, once again, the original NES had the same amount of buttons as a Game Boy, and your shield
was a solved problem because they just made it passive.
Yeah, no,
it was selectable though. You could take it off.
Yeah, that's the thing. They they incorporated that into the very design of the game.
Oh, no, I gotcha. So instead of being you can remove it, but otherwise it's always on, they made it so it's always ready, but you have to hit a button to use it.
Yes.
Right. Compared to just change the way you're facing to block.
Yeah.
You had to make an active effort to block.
Yeah, which was a change from any other top-down Zelda up to that point. Because, it's not just Zelda 1 here. All 3 previous Zelda games had the shield as a passive item. Like,
I thought it was active in Link to the Past.
No, Link to the Past, it's passive.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I played Link to the Past, so I wasn't sure.
The one I wasn't sure about was the Adventure of Link, and I think even in that one, if you have a shield, it's usually up when you're not walking or using your sword.
Yeah, no, the Adventure of Link, you have a shield out at all times.
Yeah, it's
Like
passive.
they invented the active shield thing with like Ocarina of Time.
Right.
No, they invented technically speaking, they invented the active shield with this game. And there's no real clear reason why.
Mm-hmm.
Because they, like I said, they they make you use the shield as a makeshift what the power bracelet used to do, push objects.
You are required to use the shield once early on in the game to push the sea urchins.
Right.
Yes. And then you never have to use the shield in that capacity ever again.
Because you get your sword and you can just destroy them.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a mystery why they did that and not really I remember
I'm gonna guess it's just for the sake of
the only thing
making it similar to the previous game but slightly more convenient. They did also significantly change combat because enemies having analog facings makes things significantly different.
Right.
Sorry, I just noticed that because you were fighting the guards that have shields, which the usual cheese methods for those guys doesn't work in this.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh god, I forgot how janky the rock feather flip is in this one. Ugh.
That's the other thing. That one still does require an item, so a lot of people are going to have that equipped most of the game. Thankfully, Echoes of Wisdom does not require you to have a special item to jump.
It also
or swim.
This takes a lot longer to jump than it did in the original game.
Yeah, I assume the animation just has many more frames.
Yeah.
Well, keep in mind, it wasn't until goddamn Tears of the Kingdom. No, sorry, Breath of the Wild, where a jump button was introduced to Zelda,
right,
as a regular mechanic, because for whatever reason, jumping in a Zelda game was considered to be sacrilege if it wasn't attached to an item. In fact,
or automatic contextual.
Yeah. Like, I mean, there was the backflip jump, but that's more supposed to be used for evasive purposes.
Yeah, you never used the you never used the jump for platforming,
right?
Or getting around obstacles. Like, this is the first Zelda game where jumping was a significant part of the game design, or any part of the game design, really. Right. And I do remember Nintendo really touting that fact back in the day. It's the Zelda game where you can jump.
Mm-hmm.
And indeed, further portable Zelda games would expand on that.
The Skyward Sword started being able to jump.
Was it?
Yeah, anyway.
I don't remember off the top of my head. It's been a long time.
Yeah, the point is, being able to jump with just a button is a very recent invention in Zelda.
Because navigation had previously been designed without that, and then they decided to give it to you for certain types of navigation that hadn't really been a consideration before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's when Nintendo could introduce topography to the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, especially in the Switch ones, where you really have extreme freedom of navigation.
Yes. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. I don't like it when that happens.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right. No, I remember getting back to the 8-way combat. like people didn't like the fact that this stuck to, well, something approximating the original combat parameters. I don't remember a lot of diagonal fighting in Link's Awakening, though.
There wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay, sort of. Things could move on diagonals, but they couldn't attack on diagonals, generally.
Right. And you did have 360 degrees of attack movement in the charge world. It's just, if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was either Grezzo or Nintendo who thought that sticking with 8-way movement was keeping in traction with the original game.
Allowing two analog stuff can cause navigation problems when the world wasn't designed for it.
Yeah, that's the thing. If they were going to go with true analog control, they probably would have had to have redesigned the game a lot more than they did. Because, this is a remake in the purest sense of the word for the most part. As in, they have remade all of the assets to be,
it's tile for tile the same game in almost all cases.
Right. I mean, it's pretty hard to rebuild a game one for one if you're not using the actual original game as a basis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, but that's kind of the difference between a remastering and a remake. At least these days.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Nintendo seemed to have done a well enough job with the selling of Link's Awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because you weren't able to access the original at the time that this game was being sold.
No, it's still on the Switch. It was on the Switch Virtual Console thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now it is.
No, it was on.
It wasn't. No, it wasn't. No, not in 2018.
I'm pretty sure it was on the first run. Like when they
Was
started
it one or both? All right.
No, I'm pretty sure Link's Awakening was not available when Link's Awakening came out.
List of Nintendo Switch Online games.
No,
January. No, that's Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link.
Live research.
Yep.
February 8th, 2023 is when DX was added. And I don't know if the regular one ever was, because that is pretty much a straight upgrade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the original one ever was. The only difference is that it's not color, and that there is one screen that has nothing on it instead of the photograph mouse house.
Also, I think they did some bug fixes.
Yeah,
they might have also done some bug fixes.
Yeah, because I do remember that being a thing between versions.
I suppose it might be inferior for speedrunners because who love their wrong warps. Though I think they left some in anyway.
Or created some new ones.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the point. Also, I think they got rid of some hidden messages that were in some international versions of Link's Awakening. Like, not in the American version, but in the Japanese, and for some reason the German version, there were some developer text screens.
You may be thinking Link to the Past. I don't remember anything like that being in Link's Awakening.
Are you talking about the Cukeman texts?
Possibly.
Because I know that the Cukemans, which is what a buzz blob turns into when you hit it with magic powder, instead of just being harmless, in this game they also have weird dialogue. If you talk
No,
to
they
them
had
without a
that in
weapon
the
equipped.
old game.
Right. No, in this game as opposed to in Link to the Past. There were buzz blobs in Link to the Past that turned into Cukemen if you magic powdered them, but the Cukemen didn't talk. They just weren't aggressive.
Yeah. Anyway, but that goes to going back to my original point here. It's like when Link's Awakening, the remake, hit store shelves, Link's Awakening, the old Game Boy or Game Boy Color game, was not on virtual store shelves.
And
So,
unless the only
Which
thing
is
I
kind
think
of a shame because they took out Photography Mouse and replaced it with the Dungeon Maker.
unless was the 3DS shut down at this point?
I'm like,
I don't know. I don't
no,
remember when that was.
no, it wasn't. But the 3DS and the Nintendo Switch are not the same system.
I know, but like that would have been the only place you could have gotten it was on an entirely different system.
You're really wanting to win on technicalities, aren't you?
I know.
I have all my life always wanted to live
And
on
I
technicalities.
think that
This
might
is
be
not
what
new.
I'm thinking of here. Is just it was available on 3DS, and that's where my brain was at.
Like, yes, it would have been on the 3DS Virtual Console. Fine. It's like that, that wasn't going to be the way that the this version
Oh,
was
right, yeah.
targeted. That's what I'm getting at here. This was based, they were selling Link's Awakening to a new audience
Right.
versus, this is something that's, more for the old school thing. I'm like, and the numbers do showcase that because this did far better than I would have ever expected. Like 2.5 million units sold.
That's not bad for a remake.
No, in fact, like that's exceedingly good, and probably why Grezzo got the green light to do an original Zelda game.
Mm-hmm. I was figuring it sold under 1 million. Like it did
Nope.
okay enough to warrant it existing, but not like 2 million copies good.
Like, it's amazing how big the attach rates are on Nintendo Switch games.
Oh yeah.
I mean, hell, the Metroid Prime remaster has sold over 1 million copies. And
I totally forgot
that's
the
a
Metroid
game.
Prime remaster came out. Gonna be real.
I'm like, well, regardless, like it's Nintendo and Grezzo didn't make the lateral move, or perhaps there might have been issues with Capcom over it.
Right.
I genuinely, I genuinely don't know. But they didn't do the remaking of the Oracle games like people would assume,
Yeah.
and presumably those are not in the work.
Yeah. There could be a pitch document around somewhere, but we'll never know because of NDAs and stuff.
Or they might have handed that idea to another developer. Like instead of Grezzo doing it, they have say Ilka.
Yeah.
Or, it's like, or insert Nintendo affiliated developer here. For the job.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the overall question, is this a good remake? I'd say yes.
Yeah.
Like, especially if you are a Zelda purist, like, because that is where, not Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask 3D ran into problems.
Right.
It actually changed quite a bit from the original design, due to like portable considerations and other considerations.
Yeah, they generally didn't screw it up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, this is a very,
Well,
in
this was
spite
a
of the
portable
graphic,
game going to a, let's be real, portable device. You can
Yeah.
call the Switch a home console all you want, but it's at the end of the day, it's still portable.
it's a hybrid device.
Yes.
Anyway, so I think that'll about do it for Link's Awakening here, because we have to wrap up for the next show.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings us to the week ahead. We do have a Friday show planned. On Friday, October 4th, we will be welcoming Courtesan of Fish and Ogre. We've got the scheduling problems. In fact, I sent him the video of Relentless Frontier that, the impressions we did today, a few hours ago, in fact. And he asked if we were still on for Friday. I said yes, so all systems go there.
Hooray.
And coming up on the Sunday reviews, we'll be having reviews of Aura of Worlds, Mind Seas, Cash Cow DX, and Ninth Dawn Creatures, the remake. And apparently remake is part of the title here. So until next time, I shall wish you good gaming.